Tervetuloa uuden videon pariin. Tällä kertaa ollaan Hainimissa paikassa, josta löytyy muun muassa Garrison Distillery, eli Bourbon whisky tislaamo. Mennään vähän kiertelemään, kattoo valmistusprosessia, mennään maistelemaan sitä ja ostellaan vähän tuliaisia. Tulepa mukaan ja mennään. Tervehdys! Tällä videolla päästään tutustumaan pikkusen meikäläisen toiseen lempiaiheeseen. Ja nämä lempiaiheet on totta kai syöminen ja juominen. Tänään päästään siis tutustumaan Garrison Distilleryn tuotteisiin ja maistelemaan pikkusen bourbon viskejä. Ei muuta kuin turvavyöt kiinni, nyt mennään! No niin, sitten ollaan täällä Garrison Distilleryllä, eli tislaamolla täällä tehdään austinilaista bourbon viskiä. Mennään vähän kiertämään, katsomaan miten se homma hoituu ja totta kai pitää ostaa vähän kotiin viemisiä myös. Ja ennen kiertuetta käydään vähän maistelemaan. Old fashioned. Ai että, on muuten hyvä. Garrison tislaamo sijaitsee noin tunnin ajomatkan päässä Austinista länteen päin. Tislaamo on perustettu vuonna 2006 ja oli Texasin ensimmäinen laillinen whisky-tislaamo.
Alright, so welcome out to Garrison Brothers Distillery. As she said, my name's Charlie, and this is Sandra. Sandra's going to be your best friend on the tour because she's the one pouring your samples. So if you're nice to Sandra, Sandra will be nice to you. Now, before we go up, we're going to go through some safety procedures because at some point somewhere, someone did something stupid. Now we have to make sure that's not going to be repeated. And we're going to start with no smoking on the premises. We make high-proof alcohol that reacts a little too well with flames, so we're going to keep those explosions and fires down to a max of 0. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Next, watch your step. This place was built by rednecks drunk on bourbon, so the ground's a little uneven. So be mindful of where you're walking around. As we are walking around up top of the hill, we have these nice rocky, gravelly paths laid out for you. Try and stay on that and stay off the grass for a couple reasons. One, we just got it back. It's very nice. Two, we have snakes, scorpions, spiders, and fire ants. We are a ranch. We have critters. Watch your step. Now, we're going to be walking inside our buildings. Inside that building's going to be a nice, sleek-looking concrete finish. That sleek will go to slick if there's any water on the ground. So watch your step. Also, inside those buildings, there's going to be some shiny objects. Do not touch the shiny objects. They're very hot. Now, some of the shiny objects will say things like danger and hot. That is not a challenge. That is a warning. Speaking of hot, we're going to go inside our bottling department, and inside that bottling room, there's going to be some very fancy Walmart crock pots full of very hot wax. Now, if you're curious, that wax is around 300 degrees. Now, our policy is we don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home, but here, no body parts in the wax, no wax in the body parts. Please and thank you. We're going to go inside our still house. We're going to go up some stairs to a loft area with a low-hanging beam with a mimeoproof yellow padding on it, which we call Jim Beam, because we name everything around here. Now, the name of the game with Jim Beam is Duck, and I do hope you play along. On the tour, take as many photos as you want. We highly encourage it, because we want people to know how everything is done, because we're going to show you how the bourbon is made step by step. Also, as we're walking around, I need everyone to stay together as a group. If you do not want to stay with the group and go wandering off on your own, that's fine and dandy. We just can't have you doing it up there, but you can do that down here, which means we'll have to bring you back down here if you don't want to follow our safety procedures. We're very big on safety, which is why I want you to take note of all the safety harnesses we have on the back of this trailer. There are none. So I'm going to trust that you stay seated because the ride up is a lot bumpier than you think it is. And if I catch you standing up in the back of this trailer, I'm going to slam on that brake for your safety. So if you spill your drink, I did warn you. So we're going to show you how the bourbon is made, and then I'm going to teach you a fun new way to drink it. Ready to have a good time? Yep. Okay, I know there's only 3 of you, but I feel like we can do better than that. So we're going to try this one more time because the amount of bourbon you get at the end of the tour is determined by your enthusiasm level. So we're going to try this again. I said, are you ready for a good time? Yeah! Yes! Let's head on up!
Hauska ukkeli. No niin, ollaan varovaisia.
Tislaamokierros on mahdollista varata aina tämän paikan auki ollessa, eli tiistaista lauantaihin. Kierroksella käydään läpi bourbon whiskin valmistaminen alusta saakka pullottamiseen asti. Ja lopun kruunaa vielä totta kai tasting.
Alright guys, welcome to the top of the hill where we make all of our wonderful bourbon. All the buildings up here have a very fun use and a very fun name. This is the cookhouse. It's where we do all the mash making and fermentation. That building is the still house. One half is the distillation, the other half is the bottling department. The barn building over there that we passed by is a rick house. That's just slang for rack house. It's where we store the bourbon barrels. And next to the outhouse, or next to the rick house, is the outhouse. And by the name outhouse, that should be self-explanatory. Now, we like to start a tour off the backstory of how things got going here at Garrison Brothers, and the backstory goes something like this. A long time ago, Dan Garrison helped start a software platform company that was doing pretty well, until one day they ended up being a casualty of Enron. You've heard of Enron? Oh, well, they were a big oil and gas company, and unfortunately, due to their lying and misdeeds, they went under and took a lot of people with them. And Dan Garrison's company was just kind of one of those unfortunate casualties. So at this point, Dan is now broke, unemployed, down on his luck, but he is still a loving husband and responsible father of 2. So he decided to pull himself up by his bootstraps and get to work. So one night, he was just kind of planning out what he wanted to do. He was just kind of thumbing through a magazine of like different wineries in Texas and just kind of said out loud, you know what? There's so many wineries in Texas, but there's no bourbon distilleries. It's so weird. And his wife, Nancy, just said, well, Dan, why don't you do something about that? Why don't you start one? He says, you know what? I think I will. So at that point, he decided to go get drunk at the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. I'm sorry, he went to go learn how to make bourbon was made on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. There we go. That sounds a lot better. But while he was there, he got to know all these still masters, got their blessing to make bourbon in Texas, and he got a lot of hands-on training from the still masters on how to make bourbon. So he has recipes, knowledge, know-how, skills. He even got a copper still while he was out there. It was a 100-gallon copper still. We call it the Copper Cowgirl. And we still have it here. It's adorable. You'll see it when we go inside the still house. Dan was also able to acquire this ranch because his mother-in-law was in real estate at the time. So she bought this ranch, leased it to Dan. He came back home and he wanted to get right to work. He just couldn't get started right away because he was missing a few crucial things, money being at the top of that list. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Bourbon's not a cheap industry. It takes a bit of capital to get things moving along. But because of Enron, he didn't have the finances he needed to get started. But what Dan did have were a bunch of family and friends. And thanks to their investments and contributions, that's why we're here today. And it's also in part why we're called Garrison Brothers Distillery. Because we're not just called Garrison Brothers because of Dan and his brother Charlie, but the brotherhood of people who came together to make the dream possible. And we're so thankful for all their help that we made a special club for those original investors, and we call them the Old 300, which is a reference to the original 300 settlers brought down by Stephen F. Austin, because it's Texas. We got to keep it Texas themed. And now that you hear the backstory, I'm going to teach you the ABCs of bourbon. There is a bourbon alphabet, and we're going to go through every letter of the alphabet, but don't worry, we're kind of lazy. We stop at G. This won't take too long. So we'll start with the letter A as most alphabets begin. A stands for America. Because in 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson passed legislation making bourbon the national spirit of the United States of America, which means bourbon can only be made and called bourbon right here in the U.S., not just Kentucky and Tennessee, anywhere in the U.S. But if bourbon is made outside of the United States, that is called whiskey. That's why there's whiskey distilleries around the world, but there's only one country that can make bourbon. It's like champagne, because champagne normally can only come from Champagne, France. If it's made outside of that area, that's called sparkling wine. Just like tequila can only be made in Jalisco, Mexico. I mean, if you try to make tequila here in Texas, you can only call it fun. Next letter is B, and that stands for barrel. Now, bourbon barrels have a couple rules. It has to be made of American oak, and it can only be used one time. If neither of those rules are followed, that is not a bourbon barrel. Now, the barrels that we use, more specifically, are American white oak. And they are charred for 53 seconds and toasted for 20 minutes. Now, that charring and toasting is precise and very important because that's what's going to give our bourbon its good flavor and coloring at the end. So all the cooperages, those barrel making companies that we utilize, make our barrels pretty much the same way. Next letter is C, and that stands for corn. Corn is a very key component when making bourbon. The first step to making bourbon is to make this stuff called mash, which is a combination of grains and water. And at least 51% of that grain build has to be comprised of corn. Now, here at Garrison Brothers, our mash build is 74% white corn, 15% red wheat, and 11% barley, and the water that we use to finish it is limestone well water. It's a very important part because it has a lot of minerals and nutrients in it that's really good for our mash. And so once all those ingredients are cooked up and put together, our mash is complete, and then sent right here into the fermentation room where we're going to add a special yeast to it. That yeast is going to eat the sugars naturally producing that mash, convert the sugars into alcohol, and that's going to turn our mash into distiller's beer. Now, once that distiller's beer is ready, it's going to be piped over to the still house, taking us to the next letter, D for distill proof, because we're going to distill our distiller's beer into a raw alcoholic substance that we call White Dog. If that sounds like moonshine to you, no. We pay taxes on it, we make it in the daytime too, not just the nighttime. So we can call it whatever we want. And we call it white dog for 2 reasons. White, it's clear. Dog, it's gonna bite you. Our white dog is coming out the still between 130 proof and 140 proof. It cannot be distilled higher than 160 proof because that's no longer bourbon. That's things like Everclears, vodkas, and blindness, and we don't go that high. Okay, I mentioned blindness because you ever seen the old like black and white photos of the moonshiners with the glassed over eyes and missing teeth? Did you ever wonder why they had glassed over eyes and missing teeth? Yeah, it's because the fumes from those that were so toxic from that shine, it just took away their eyesight. It was also so toxic to drink that it rotted the enamel off their teeth and all their teeth fell out. But now we have things like OSHA, so we don't have to worry about that. It's great. So I need to reiterate that our white dog is 130 proof and 140 proof, 70% alcohol. I'm saying this again because you're gonna get a sample of that here in a little bit. Baby sips. You've been warned. So once our white dog's been properly distilled, the next letter is E, and that stands for entry proof, because we're now gonna enter the white dog into our bourbon barrels. Now that white dog cannot touch that barrel higher than 125 proof. And the white dog we just made, 130 to 140, has to be proofed down. And they're going to proof it down using filtered rainwater. They don't use the well water at that point because they like that well water just for the mash making portion. Also, well water is really hard on the pipes, and rainwater is supposedly a lot easier to come by if it ever decides to rain again. Anyway, so it's going to be proofed down to 124 or to 124.5. They found that to be the perfect sweet spot number through trial and error. And that white dog is going to sit in that barrel for about 3 to 6 years. Now, that might not sound like a lot of time, but that's because here in Texas, the heat ages our bourbon very quickly. And so, because of that, what is a 4-year-old barrel for us is equivalent to like a 12-year-old barrel in Kentucky. And that's all because the Texas heat that we all love so much. But as much as we love the Texas heat for all the help it does for our bourbon, it also kind of hurts it a little bit in some ways. Like the evaporation rate is a lot higher here. See, for Kentucky and Tennessee, it's about 3 to 4%. It's called angel share, that evaporation. Angel share is 3 to 4% of that barrel is lost per year. Well, here in Texas, according to Dan Garrison, we have drunk angels. Because our angel share is about 13, 14%, almost 15. It's really high. So we lose substantially so much more. However, it tastes so good in the end, so it's an okay trade-off. So that white dog's gonna sit in the barrel for about 3 to 6 years, and once that time has passed, that white dog has been transformed into delicious bourbon! And that's so exciting because the next letter is F, and that stands for fill proof, because we're going to start filling the bottles done right there in the bottling room, aka Party Central. You're gonna learn why it's called Party Central here in a little bit. So the bourbon proofs that we do range between 80, which is the minimum a bourbon can be to still be called bourbon, and the strongest stuff that we do is cask strength. That means as strong as leaving the barrel as strong as going into the bottle. And that can vary. Like our Cowboy bourbon is a cask strength. We release that once a year. Are you familiar with Cowboy? No? It can be pretty strong. Let's see, a couple of years ago, the Cowboy bourbon was 134.8 proof. Last year, it was 140.9. They call that hazmat because it lights on fire very easily. Would not recommend burning it. I would recommend drinking it. It's so much better that way. And so the last letter is the most important letter because G stands for genuine. Bourbon is the genuine spirit, also known as the honest spirit. And that's because nothing can be added to that bourbon at any point in the production process, otherwise it's not a bourbon. The only thing that can touch our bourbon as you go from grain to glass are those grains, the water, and the wood from the barrel. That's it. If anything else is introduced to it, it's not a true bourbon. For example, if we try to take extra sugar, like bags of sugar, and dump it into our vats to try and convert that sugar into more alcohol, that's a blended whiskey, not a bourbon. If we try to add food coloring or herbs or spices when it's in the barrels to give it a new look or flavor, that is a blended whiskey, not a bourbon. And so the only thing that's made here at Garrison Brothers is plain, simple, genuine bourbon. Any questions? No? Talkative bunch, love it. So we're gonna go inside here and listen to the mash cook, talk more about mash making and fermentation. So come on inside.
I'm great, how are y'all? All right, so this is my mash house fermentation room. So I'm gonna start behind me with my 3 cookers. I'm gonna start with well water. This is the only part of the process I use well water because it's hard on my pipes, but it helps my fermentation. So again, start with well water, get that up to about 140. I'm gonna add in some barley and corn. I'm gonna boil that for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna slowly cool it off and add more wheat and barley in on top of that. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes me about 6 hours to do a cook. We're gonna do 4 of them a day, so we do run 24/7. He's gonna pass out some of my mash. This is unfermented mash. It's just corn, wheat, and barley. It's basically like a sweet breakfast cereal at this point. It's starting at about 21 bricks of sugar. That's how we measure our sugar content. I didn't add any sugar to it. It's just corn, wheat, and barley.
Yeah.
So it's all natural.
So now.
Essentially, it's breakfast without blueberries and bacon.
Yeah.
That's right.
Throw some bananas, blueberries in there.
Yeah.
Be pretty good.
Kiitos kyllä. Joo, no vähän niinku aamupala ilman marjoja. Puuro, tosi hyvä maku.
All right. So once I'm done over there, I'm gonna pump it into one of my fermenters. These are 500 gallons. My big ones in the back are 4,000 gallons. So that's where I add the yeast. That's where all that natural sugar is gonna get converted into alcohol. So again, like I said, it started about 21 bricks of sugar. After about 2 to 3 days of fermentation, we ended at about 7. So it's about 14% alcohol by volume after a fermentation process. So we do a sweet mash instead of a sour mash. So sweet mash is basically every day we pump everything out and clean it out. A sour mash would be we leave some in on top. It helps with the pH levels, but we don't have that issue because of modern technology. So yeah, if you want to try this, you can. It's basically a strong corn beer. So all you want to do is dip your finger in. You don't want the grain cap, you just want the liquid. So yeah, just dip your finger in and try it. It's basically a corn beer.
Yeah.
Distiller's beer is what they call it. But
Ihan kotiviini meillä. Yeah.
yeah, that's basically all I do. Any questions?
No,
Cool.
so far. Se varmaan palaa pois. Kotiviiniä.
Kilju.
Joo. Laittaa kotiviinillä ja kiljulle.
Well, how are y'all folks doing today?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Will. I'm one of the distillers here. I'll just walk through a typical day of what we'll do.
Yep, nice to meet you.
So Phil over there probably showed you how the mash is made and all the fermentation days it'll take.
Yeah.
So then we'll pump the mash into these stills. So we got Little Boy, Fat Man right here, and then Big Johnson. It's the same names as over there. He probably said them or not. And then the only one that's different is Copper Cowgirl. That's the first still we had out here. It's early 70s model, but she's down for maintenance right now. But we guzzled her up just for this show. We'll bring it up to a rolling boil, which means my steam is going to turn on and heat up that bottom plate. As it starts heating up, alcohol vapor is going to go up to that plate. You see that little metal sight glass right there? It's going to have its own mini distillation. So water and alcohol are going to separate for each plate going up there until it gets to the very last one. And then it gets shocked back into liquid form with this black condenser right here. That water is usually around like 40 degrees or so. And as you can see, it comes right back out the top right here. This would be White Dog. The reason you call it White Dog is because you pay your taxes on it. So there are some shots y'all get to try. Would you like to hand them out, Charlie?
Yeah.
Now it's going to be about the same proof as this one is. It's about 140. So you can either do it this way, like rub it on your hands and kind of inhale the flavor, or you can just take it back.
So, rub it to my hands.
Yeah. You can also use the fountain if you want. It's alcohol. You'll find out if you have a cut, believe me.
Yeah. So I can sip it?
Yeah.
Nyt lähtee. Kylläpä vahva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes you grit your teeth, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's good. Olipa häijyn vahva.
They're going to run about 8-9 hours. Usually these will run about 8-9 hours. Big Johnson here will take about 12. And if we had Copper Cowgirl running, it'd usually take 2-3 hours. We're going to check their proof, and then we'll pump them over there into the next room, which is the barreling room. I wish I could take you over there, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. So we'll just stay in this room for now. So we'll pump them into a tank we have back there, and then we'll proof it down with rainwater to 124 proof. It's proof we go in. A lot of places do it differently, but that's how we do it. From there, we're going to pump them into our barrels, and the barrels take over the next 3-4 years. So once they're in the barrel, I'm done, at least for that part. As they sit out there, they're going to breathe, essentially. So as you can feel, the hot air was cold this morning, so they're starting to expand. The liquid's seeping in, getting all the caramelized sugar from the char and all that. And once it starts getting cold again tonight, it's going to come back in. So basically, it's just breathing in and out, in and out. You'll notice if you, when y'all go to one of the barns, you'll hear kind of faintly breathing, and that's just absorbing that liquid. And as you can see, it forms colors on these bottles.
Hey, nice to meet
All right.
you. Hey,
I'm Craig.
JJ.
Welcome to Bottling Packaging.
Thank you.
You've been in the mash house, still house.
Yeah.
Everything kind of ends up here.
Okay.
This is where we do, like I said, bottling and packaging, where we dip the bottles and everything. We do have about 22 volunteers helping us out today. We have volunteers from Wednesday to Saturday. They do a 2-day commitment. So these guys are here Wednesday and Thursday. They got here at 8:30. We serve them breakfast, luckily not cooked by us, by our on-site chef.
Yeah.
And so they start socialize, get to know each other. About 8:45, we're going to do what we call our first quality control shot of the bourbon.
Yeah.
So they come in little communion cups. We serve it in a communion tray. And we'll do those every hour on the hour throughout the whole day. At 9 o'clock, we'll get started. They'll go to the station, which they think they'd like to do. And we'll get started working.
Yeah.
We'll turn the music on. When college football's on Saturdays, we turn the TVs on.
Yeah.
We have our concoction, John Daly. It's in a pitcher over here. He drinks a little bit, so it's sweet tea lemonade and 2 bottles of bourbon.
Okay.
And we'll refill that during the whole day.
Yeah. Okay.
We have refrigerators full of beer, soda,
Yeah.
water, sweet tea and lemonade. We have coffee, snacks, anything they may need throughout the day to help them work and have a good time.
Yeah, that's good.
At 12, they break for lunch. That's where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Again, cooked by our on-site chef. And we'll come back at 1, do a quality control shot again, and work till about 3:30, 3:45.
Okay.
And there's no way we just get all this bourbon out without their help. That's why we have these volunteers. They do get 50% off a bottle of bourbon, small batch, single barrel, or honeydew down at the gift shop.
Yeah.
And they do get a nice gift back from us at the end of the time with us. Includes a shirt, t-shirt, and a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a great time. We tell people we definitely need their help.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. So what goes on in this room? That's the big question. So it starts right here. Usually this is a big pallet of bottles. All right. So we do get our bottles from Poland. Great quality of bottles. They do a lot of the lettering and labeling that you see on here, and it's very clear. That's why we like it so much from them. But a company in Loggerhead, Wisconsin also helps us with this. So none of this is done on site. It's all done sourced out.
Yeah.
We have what we call our redneck Bellagio fountain, like the one in Vegas with the lights and the music.
Yeah.
We don't have that. What we do have is a 4-rack bottle filler, or bottle cleaner. And I hope all these are on here. So the force of the bottle doesn't look right here, but if these bottles were off of here, it'd reach the ceilings. That's how good it is. But it cleans it in about 8 to 10 seconds. Hopefully you get all the stuff out of there, even though it's packaged very nicely. Then it's going to go to basically the only machine in this room. This is Rosie, nicknamed after the maid from the Jetsons.
Yeah.
If you remember that old cartoon.
Yeah.
So some 20-year-old don't, but they go, okay, if I drink some bourbon, maybe that looks like Rosie. Let me see if there's anything. Okay, there's a little bit. So what we have you do is just, you're going to take a bottle, you're going to push it up, you're going to clear this ledge and just push it all the way back.
Okay.
Let's see if we can't fill her up. Yeah, push all the way back.
Like this?
All right. So it all fills are 750 milliliter bottles, and it should stop precisely on the level that we want.
Okay.
It's a little bit low. That's why it's going a little bit slower. We'll fill it up after lunch when the volunteers come back.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. Perfect.
That's
all right.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that's the only, everything else is done by hand.
Yeah.
Rosie's the only machine in here that they'll do that. And there's just no way, you can do that by hand. So that's why we have the machine. From there, it's going to go to our redneck corker. So a theme, redneck, okay?
Yeah,
We're in the hill country. So we're going to take the corks and we're just going to secure the cork into the bottle. So we're just going to press down.
Yeah.
Come up. Done by a volunteer. So they do all these bottles just like this. Yeah, they get a good workout. We want to make sure there's nothing looking back at you. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no char. Besides our cowboy bourbon, which isn't filtered, Everything's triple filtered, so there shouldn't be anything in here. So what our volunteers are doing to make sure there's nothing floating around.
Yeah.
And also checking the integrity of the glass.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when they press in here or bottles are clanging, we'll get scratches or get cracks. We want to make sure that's, you know, when you buy the bourbon, there's not a scratch or cracks that's going to cause the bottle to break on you.
Yeah.
So that's what we're checking. If it's something wrong, or if there's something in the bottle, we're going to refilter it, put it through Rosie, recork it, and send it back through again. If the bottle's bad, we'll trash the bottle.
Okay.
Okay, so it goes from this table, then it goes to our main table. But this is our main table. It has 11 crock pots. Walmart grade, moving up in the world, pioneer woman crock pots. So we have, it's almost 300 degree wax. So we're using our yellow wax since we're doing our honeydew.
Yep.
So the first two here is what we call our pigtail station. So what Pam's doing is, there's a pigtail. So,
Smooth side and a rough side.
so it's deer hide.
Yeah.
So here at Garrison, we make and bottle bourbon. We're in the hill country of Texas.
Yeah.
Figured deer hide makes a great pull tab when you're ready to break that seal of wax. And we didn't want to use anything synthetic or plastic that could break on you. So deer hide makes a great pull tab when you're ready to break that wax.
Yeah.
So as you can see, she gets some wax on there. She wraps it around where the bottle and the cork meet. Just so enough there's left that you can pull it in there.
Yeah.
So Pam does a great job. Now, Slim is dipping her bottles. As you can see, the bottle is dipped upside down.
Yeah.
All right. We dip it and we come right back up. We don't want it to linger in the wax. And I tell people we've had this happen, not very often. Our wonderful volunteers will dip it, turn to their, coworker or, their person next to them. They'll start talking and the cork will pop and all the wonderful bourbon goes into the crock pot and we got to trash it. So we asked them to please come back up out of that 300 degree wax. Now we can't flip it over. Maker's Mark in Kentucky has that, very well known red drippy wax. So they got a trademark on that.
Yeah.
Not just the red drippy wax, but the drip itself. So we're not able to flip it right back over. We got to let the wax drip down.
Yeah.
And we get a smooth finish. It takes about 1.5 minutes for that. But when we're ready, as you can see all these leather punches hanging down from the ceiling, it has the Star of Texas on it. So every bottle of Garrison, if you'll look at the liquor store or wherever, it's going to have a Star of Texas. Yeah. So the last thing that Slim's going to do right there is imprint the Star of Texas on there. The skirt right here is really good. What we like, and pretty unique to Garrison, since it is all hand dipped, not by machine, things are going to be a little different.
Yeah.
Of course, with Slim, it's pretty much the same because he can hit the same spot. But they may be a little shorter, a little uneven.
Yeah.
But we like that just because it is hand dipped. So we want people to know that.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. This is our second light check. So we have two. We have the first one up here, the second one right here.
Yeah.
So we just dipped it in wax. So our main concern is the wax. Make sure it's good. Make sure it's not covering the lettering or the star in front. Make sure there's no big bubbles and definitely no drips like Maker's Mark. And make sure you can see the 5 points of the star. So that's what they're checking for on this. If they find something wrong, whether it be the star or the wax, they're going to put it in this little area right here. We call this our triage mash area. We're going to use box cutters, lighters, and we're going to try to fix that wax. Now, this is an example of something went really wrong, so we had to cut the wax off.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is recork it, re-pigtail it, re-dip it, and send it back down. Hopefully the appearance is much better, But a lot of times it takes too much work to try to correct it, so we just cut it off and send it back there. It's a lot quicker. Triage, light check, it's going to go to here. So all we're going to use is Windex and microfiber cloths. We're just going to clean the bottles down. We want to make sure we get the fingerprints and extra wax off and make sure the appearance is good. And when I started here, I just thought this was a bottleneck hang thingy. But this is at Garrison, we call this a wanger. Okay, so it goes around the bottle just like that. We tell people when the volunteers come, if this is your job here at Garrison, you're titled the wanger hanger.
Yeah.
Now Urban Dictionary has a different definition than we do at Garrison's. We tell people if you'd like to Google that and find out what it is, go ahead. And if you wish to put that on your future resume, make sure that's what you want. So then we hand number every bottle except for a boot flask.
Okay.
So this is my terrible handwriting, but we're at 21,001, and that's just for the year.
Okay.
And that's just for honeydew. So every bottle that we do different bourbon, like small batch, we always start at 1 for the new year.
Yeah.
So we're going to do about 30,000 on this run. So we got 9,000 more to go on this run. But if you look on the side, you'll see that everyone's hand numbered like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty cool. From there, we're going to box it up. We're going to put it in these boxes. We put 6 bottles into a box. We're going to take it over here after we glue it. We're going to put it on the pallet. We're going to put 100 cases of bourbon or 600 bottles on our pallet. It gets wrapped up in here. We're going to temporarily take it to our on-site warehouse. Now, it can be distributed from here, but these are actually going to go to San Antonio. Now, we're in every state now. I think we're in 7 countries and almost every military installation.
Okay.
So that's cool, and that we're expanding like that. What's also neat, what I learned when I started here, is that every bottle that you see out, what we call out in the wild, whether it be a liquor store, restaurant, or bar, is bottled, dipped, packaged in this one room. We don't have an off-site facility. So that's why we need the help of the volunteers. And it's pretty unique. So many hands are involved in actually bottling and boxing and dipping the bottle.
Yeah.
Pretty unique to Garrison, so it's pretty cool. Any questions that you have about
so cool.
what goes on in here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all coming out, learn about what we do. Thanks, JJ.
Thank you so much.
Charlie, you can take them, drink some bourbon?
Sarjatarjoittaja on liikkeellä, lyödään tänne
Anywhere you
omaa
like.
tarkkaa.
If you can find a place.
Let me
You
see.
can do also this door. I don't know if there's any space on that door. Or
Yeah.
or on the wall.
Oh, I think
No, we love it on the door.
there is it.
Welcome to Barrel Barn Uno, the final stage of the tour. They've shown you how to make bourbon, and now I'm going to teach you a fun new way to drink bourbon. And as I did say, this is Barrel Barn Uno, because this was the first rick house that we built. And we like to think outside the box when it comes to naming things. So, Uno being 1 in Spanish, we call it Barrel Barn Uno, because it was the first one we built.
Yeah.
And they continued that trend because after Uno, they built Dos, and then Tres, and then Cuatro, and then they lost count, and then, because the next one's named Pavo. I mean, it's Spanish for turkey, because it was a turkey barn at one point.
Okay.
So, and they just turned it into a barrel barn. After Pavo, they built Dance Hall, and then they built Show Barn. Now, if you want to guess why we lost count, here's a hint: we make bourbon. Now, back to Uno in here. I'm going to teach you a couple fun techniques about drinking bourbon. But we're going to go ahead and go through this. First and foremost, there is no wrong way to drink bourbon. How you drink it is the right way to do it. Unless you're pouring it on the ground, because that is the wrong way to drink. That is alcohol abuse. Shame on you if that's you. Now, what Sandra's poured out for us is our small batch bourbon. It's the black wax bottle, 94 proof, our flagship, the one we make the most of. And it's pretty good. If you don't like it, that's your fault. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you 2 techniques: nosing and chewing bourbon. And how it's going to work is, first, forget everything you think you know about drinking, because it will not apply. Especially if you're a wine drinker. Whichever one of you might be the wine drinker. As a wine drinker, you're probably going to feel the instinct to grab the glass and then smell it. That's the wrong instinct to follow. It's bourbon, not wine. There's no bouquet of a fruity aroma waiting for you at the end of the glass, just a burnt sinus cavity. So we're not going to smell it, because it's going to throw off your sense of taste. And when you grab a glass, don't drink it, at least not yet. Because not only will you have less bourbon than in your glass, we're not going to refill your glass. Okay? So if you get a little excited and go, bourbon, ugh. Oops, can I get more? I'm going to go, no, corner. I will put you in timeout.
Okay.
I've done it before, and I will do it again.
I believe you.
It is demeaning, demoralizing, and I find it funny. Also, if you drink it, it's going to shock your taste buds, and you won't be able to do this next part correctly. So when you grab a glass, don't smell it, don't drink it. So grab a glass. And there's enough for everyone who wants one, as long as you're over 21. At a nosing glass, created in Glencairn, Scotland. That's right, Scottish crystal, you got right there on the palm of your hand. You know, you can tell it from Scotland. If you're up to the light, it says the Glencairn glass stamp right there at the bottom of the glass. There's a stamp of approval. These little buggers don't come cheap for this. But we spend more money on shipping than we do the actual glass, which means none of these are party favors. We get them all back. I know, we're evil, wicked, mean, bad, and nasty. But if you like the nosing glass, when we're done here, we head back down to hospitality. You are more than welcome to go inside our gift shop and get yourself a $15 Garrison Brothers nosing glass. That's right, $15 while supplies last. Okay, sales pitch over. Now, how we're going to nose bourbon is you're going to slosh it around a little bit in that glass. You're going to put your nose in the glass away from your mouth, but you're going to breathe in through your mouth with the gasp of air like this. Yep, just like that. Up to the nose and into the mouth. Now, when you did that, you probably noticed a couple things. One, you can already taste it, right? Tastes pretty good, right? Another thing you probably noticed was a lot of saliva started to build up in your mouth, right? Mm-hmm. Don't be embarrassed by your drooling. That's a very natural reaction, okay? That's your taste buds getting really excited for that bourbon, as they should be. It's good bourbon. So, the next step is chewing. And how it's going to work is you're going to take that saliva, you're going to take the saliva that you just built up, you're going to move it to the center of your tongue. You're going to take a small sip of the bourbon, mix it with that saliva because that's going to proof it down. You're going to roll that around on your tongue, front and center, not side to side. It's not mouthwash. Front and center, you're going to keep that focused for about 10 seconds. Just keep in mind, as you do this, your mouth is going to go numb. Your tongue is going to feel like it's been set on fire. However, after the 10-second counts, and then drink it down, it's not going to burn going down your throat. It's just going to probably burn up your tongue a little bit. But your tongue can take the beating. It's going to recover a lot faster than your throat will. That's the trade-off. So go ahead and nose it one more time. And then chew the bourbon, small sip, and roll around on your tongue. Imagine like you're trying to get like the candy coating off an M&M. That's the kind of rolling around you want it to do. Good bourbon.
Onpa hyvä. It is very good.
Mm-hmm. So, did it burn your tongue?
Yeah.
Did it burn your tongue as well? Yeah. Did it burn your throat?
No. That's right.
There you go. You did it right. And now that you've done it once, we're going to do it a second time. Okay. Now, the reason we're doing this back to back is, you know what, I'll let you find out why. So go ahead and take another nosing. And then chew. Small sip, roll around front and center of the tongue for about 10 seconds. Now, the reason I'm telling you front and center is because that's where your sweet and savory taste buds are. The sides of your tongue are your sour and bitter taste buds. So if you're sloshing it back and forth like wine, it's not going to give you that desired flavor that we're trying to help you find. That's why we're trying to keep it front and centered.
It is good.
Good bourbon.
Very good. Good bourbon.
Very good indeed. So, how's the second go? Better?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so.
Yeah, was it a little smoother maybe?
Yeah.
Possibly a little sweeter, like you're starting to pick up new flavors?
I think it's spreading in my mouth.
Yeah.
More. Yeah.
Yeah, spread it out, making it a lot more easier.
Yeah.
Because that's what nosing and chewing is doing. It makes it that much palatable. I mean, it makes it easier on your palate, so the more you do it, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're just going to have a nice glass of whatever your favorite alcohol is. Nose it and chew it enough that you're not going to get that burn. You're going to get flavor. And that's pretty much the goal.
Yeah.
And this method can be utilized for any alcohol. Bourbon, wine, tequila. Probably not beer. I would not recommend it with beer. Oh, also, final question. Did it burn your throat?
No, not at all.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're not a bourbon connoisseur. Keep this up, you'll be a bourbon snub in no time. And at the end of the tours, we always like to do a toast with a group of people because it's better to have a toast when drinking with others, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a favorite toast?
Keep peace.
Keep peace.
Keep peace.
All right, well, keep peace.
Keep peace.
Salud.
En tiedä, pitäisikö lippis ostaa kuitenkin. Onko mie? Joo, semmonen oli Garrison Bros Distillery. Aika makia. tosiaan kaikki tekevät saakeli käsipelillä se pullotusvaiheessa, niin se yllätti mut. En arvannut kyllä. Taas mahtavia ihmisiä, hyvä tuote, aito tuote, homma toimii. Ja kyllä muuten maistuu. Nyt lähdetään pikkuhiljaa kämpille päin. Vielä yksi pikku rinkki mahtuu tähän massuun. Ei muuta kuin ensi kertaa.
Semmonen oli Garrison Bros Distillery. Todella mielenkiintoinen tarina, mahtava opas ja hyvät bourbon whiskit. Jos liikut lähellä, niin erittäin vahva suositus mennä vierailemaan täällä ja käy ainakin ostamassa Garrison Bros whiskiä kotiin viimeisiksi. Nyt meikäläinen lähtee pikkusen maistelemaan bourbonia, palataanpa asialle. Seuraavassa jaksossa.